AITA for rejecting my ex who wanted me back only after her roommate found me attractive? So, I'm 29 years old. I work as a commercial HVAC technician. I make a decent living, about $76,000 a year, and I live in Phoenix, Arizona. Honestly, I thought my life was pretty well put together. A stable trade with good benefits, my pickup truck paid off, a small emergency fund in the works, and even a few investments in index funds. I'm not a high-level executive, but I'm doing all right for myself, especially coming from nothing. My dad was a mechanic who taught me the value of honest work, and my mom was a nurse. She taught me to treat people with respect. They both passed away in a car accident when I was 24, and it really made me appreciate stability and genuine relationships. I'm not the type to chase after flashy things or impress people with things I cannot afford. I drive a reliable Ford F-150. I live in a modest condo and spend my free time on hobbies that actually matter to me. I had been dating a girl named Courtney for about 14 months. She's 27 and works in social media marketing. Basically, she creates Instagram content for local businesses and makes maybe $31,000 in a good year. But she acted like she was running a Fortune 500 company, always talking about her personal brand and influence. Her apartment was filled with ring lights, phone tripods, and enough makeup to stock a department store aisle. We met at a coffee shop where she was taking pictures of her avocado toast for 20 minutes before eating it. I was just there reading trade magazines and working on my laptop. She struck up a conversation about my vintage laptop. It was not vintage, just 3 years old and still perfectly functional. But apparently, that counted as retro in her world. At first, her whole social media world was kind of cute. She was energetic, outgoing, and always planning photogenic outings. But after a few months, I started to notice that everything we did had to be staged and documented. She could not just enjoy a sunset. We had to find the perfect angle, adjust the lighting, take 40 photos, and then spend an hour editing them. We had this Sunday routine at a trendy downtown coffee shop called Brew and Bloom. The coffee was something like $6, but she insisted on going because it was aesthetic for her posts. Exposed brick walls, Edison bulbs, succulents, apparently perfect for Instagram. I would bring my tablet to read trade publications or work on a personal project, an app that helps find good fishing spots based on water conditions, weather, and recent user catches. I had been working on it for about 8 months, learning app development through online courses and YouTube. Nothing extraordinary, just something I enjoyed doing in my spare time. The idea came from my frustration with finding good places to fish in Arizona. Sure, there are the well-known lakes, but I wanted to find those little hidden spots where you can actually catch something without fighting a crowd. So, I started building a platform where users could share their catches, water conditions, the best times to fish, and even photos. That particular Sunday had started normally. I was reading an article about new HVAC efficiency standards while she was having her photo shoot with her overpriced oat milk latte. She must have taken at least 20 photos. The overhead shot, the side angle with the morning light, the artistic sipping shot, the whole 9 yards. The lighting is perfect today, she said, adjusting her phone for the 15th time. This is going to get great engagement. I nodded distractedly, focused on my article. That should have been my first clue that we were living in 2 completely different worlds. After she finished her photos and posted her carefully curated content, she put her phone down and looked at me like she had been rehearsing something for a while. Ryan, I need to be honest with you about something that has been on my mind. I looked up from my tablet, giving her my full attention. Okay, what is up? I'm not attracted to guys like you anymore. The words hung in the air between us. A part of me was not even surprised. I had felt her pulling away for months. She always seemed bored when I talked about my passions. She often made comments about how I should be more ambitious or social, constantly comparing me to guys on her Instagram who drove luxury cars or traveled every weekend. What do you mean, guys like me? I asked. She leaned back in her chair, as if explaining something obvious to a slow child. You know, the blue-collar types who would rather stay home and tinker with things than go out and network with successful people. I need someone with real ambition, someone who is going places in life, someone who understands the importance of social status and the right connections. I could feel other customers starting to watch as her voice got louder. Look at Dylan from my gym, she continued. He has his own crypto business. He drives a BMW. He is always posting about his wins. That is the kind of energy I need in my life. And then she delivered the final blow. She wanted to take a step back to explore other options and figure out what she really wanted. But she hoped we could still be friends because I'm really nice and stable, and she values our connection. Nice and stable, like I was a savings account instead of a person. Then she added, with a condescending smile, "You are a good guy, Ryan. You deserve someone who appreciates your simple lifestyle." I'm just not that person anymore. Instead of getting defensive or begging her to reconsider, I surprised myself by staying completely calm. I looked at her for a long moment, processing everything she had just said, and then I slowly nodded. "You know what, Courtney? You are absolutely right." Her eyebrows shot up. This clearly was not the reaction she expected. She probably thought I would argue, get upset, or try to convince her I was worth it. In fact, I've been thinking the same thing, just in reverse. I continued, setting my tablet down. We are fundamentally incompatible. I'm looking for someone who values substance over appearances. Someone who wants to build something real instead of just performing for social media. Her expression started to shift as she realized the conversation was not following her script. "I've noticed you treat our relationship like a permanent photo shoot instead of an actual partnership," I said, gesturing to her phone where she was still editing photos just minutes earlier. "Always staging everything. Always talking about me like I'm a project to be improved rather than someone you actually want to be with." She immediately got defensive. "That is not fair, Ryan. I'm just trying to build something meaningful for my future. Social media is a real career now. By constantly hinting I should get a better job, by rolling your eyes every time I talk about my fishing app, by introducing me as your handyman, as if I'm a service provider instead of your boyfriend." She opened her mouth to respond, but I was not finished. "And let's be honest about the networking," I went on. "You do not want me to be more social. You want me to be more profitable. That is not the same thing." I stood up, leaving cash on the table for our drinks. "Look, you want someone to fund your lifestyle and boost your social media image. I want someone who appreciates me for who I actually am. We should just end this cleanly instead of pretending it is working." As I walked out, I could feel her stunned gaze on my back. She had probably expected me to fight for her, to plead for another chance. Instead, I felt a strange sense of relief, as if I had finally admitted something I had been avoiding for months. "Okay, pause for a second. I know. Everyone is cheering for Ryan right now. He was calm, he was collected. He said all the right things and walked away with his dignity. And yes, that is great, good for him. But here is the uncomfortable truth. He stayed for 14 months. 14. He felt her pulling away for months and ignored it. He saw her roll her eyes at his passions, introduce him as her handyman, and turn every moment of their relationship into Instagram content, and he stayed. Because stability felt safer than admitting the person who chose him did not actually respect him. This is not just on Courtney, it is on Ryan, too. And honestly, it is on most of us. We have all done it. Stayed in something comfortable, even when that comfort was slowly humiliating us. Told ourselves, it is not that bad, when deep down, we knew it was. We rationalize, we adapt, we shrink ourselves a little, and then a little more, until one day someone tells you to your face that you are not enough, and a part of you is not even surprised. The real lesson is this. Stop waiting for someone to officially reject you before you trust what you have already been feeling for months. Your gut is not exaggerating. It is being honest. The moment respect leaves a relationship, love starts running on fumes, and fumes always run out. Do not wait for the explosion to admit there was a problem. Now back to the original poster. That evening, I was back in my condo, a decent one-bedroom I had managed to buy 2 years earlier. Nothing fancy. A basic kitchen, a small living room, a bedroom just big enough for my bed and a dresser. But it was mine, bought with money I had saved by living below my means and picking up overtime shifts whenever I could. I was sitting at my small dining table, working on my fishing app, trying to improve the GPS accuracy, when my phone buzzed. The message was from Hannah, Courtney's roommate, which completely surprised me. During my entire relationship with Courtney, Hannah and I had exchanged maybe 5 words in total. She was 26, worked in quality control at a local manufacturing company, and seemed to spend her free time reading or working on her own projects. Whenever I was over at their place, she would usually just say a quick hello before disappearing into her room or the kitchen. "Hey Ryan, I heard about today. Sorry it ended like that. Kind of a random question, but I noticed there is a for rent sign on the duplex across the street from us. I know the landlady personally if you are interested in checking it out. I stared at the message for a full minute. It was genuinely thoughtful, especially coming from someone who had every reason to stay out of her roommate's drama. That is incredibly kind of you. Thank you, I replied. Yeah, I would definitely be interested in looking at it if you would not mind introducing me. No problem at all. Mrs. Thompson is great, a retired high school principal. She is really fair with rent and takes great care of her properties. How about we go over tomorrow around 6 p.m.? I will introduce you. The whole interaction was surprisingly simple and pleasant. No drama, no awkward taking sides, just one person helping another during a tough time. It was refreshing after months of walking on eggshells with Courtney. The next evening, Hannah walked me across the street to meet Mrs. Thompson. The duplex was exactly what I had been looking for without really daring to hope for it. 2 bedrooms, a renovated kitchen with good appliances, a small backyard perfect for grilling or tinkering on my truck, and most importantly, affordable rent in a good neighborhood. Mrs. Thompson was a sharp 68-year-old woman who, after looking over my professional references, started asking me very specific questions about my trade. She had been a teacher for 30 years and had that direct way of sizing people up that is common in someone used to dealing with teenagers. Hannah told me you were working on a fishing app, she said, adjusting her glasses. My late husband loved to fish. He was always complaining about not having enough information on where and when to go. When I took out my phone to show her the app's interface, explaining how it combined data on water conditions, recent user catches, and whether to suggest the best times and spots, her eyes literally lit up. This is exactly the kind of practical problem solving I respect, she said, scrolling through the features I had developed. Too many young people today are working on useless things that do not help anyone. You are building something genuinely useful. She asked insightful questions about the development process, how I handled user data privacy, and my potential plans for monetization. I found myself explaining technical details I rarely got to talk about, and she followed along perfectly. By the end of the tour, not only did she accept my application, but she offered me a reduced rent, $1,100 a month instead of the listed $1,300. As she put it, good tenants who build real things and treat people with respect are worth supporting. Over the next few weeks, Hannah helped me organize my move, not in a dramatic or invasive way, just with practical gestures that made everything easier. She told me when the power companies were easiest to get a hold of, which internet providers were most reliable in the neighborhood, and even a local shop where I could find good quality used appliances. And during these interactions, I started to notice something that honestly surprised me. Hannah asked real, thoughtful questions about my work and seemed genuinely interested in the answers. When I mentioned a complex HVAC installation I had done at the local hospital, she wanted to know about the technical challenges and the differences between commercial and residential systems. When I talked about my fishing app, she asked about the user interface, data management, and if I had considered adding social features like reviews or photo sharing. These were not polite, throwaway questions. She was genuinely curious and even offered ideas from her own background in quality control. You know, she said one evening while I was packing boxes, I never understood why Courtney seemed so bored when you talked about your projects. Software development is basically just problem solving with logic and creativity. It is fascinating if you actually listen. It was a simple comment, but it hit me deeply. Someone finally understood that my interests were not boring or pointless. On the contrary, they were interesting, provided you took the time to appreciate them. Meanwhile, Courtney started making appearances whenever Hannah and I were discussing the move. She would stand in the doorway, lips pursed, making passive-aggressive remarks about how helpful Hannah was being and how she had never seen her take such an interest in someone else's life. Do not you think it is weird that my roommate is more interested in your situation than I was? She sniped one night, catching us comparing internet plans on my laptop. She is pretty invested in your move. What Courtney did not realize was that these supposedly boring conversations about internet and utilities were actually the first real intellectual connections I had experienced in months. Hannah understood the technical aspects of my job. She appreciated the skill it took to solve problems. She asked intelligent questions about my app and helped me think about certain features in a new way. About 3 weeks after I settled into the duplex, I made a discovery that completely changed my perspective on the past year and Courtney's behavior. Hannah and I were having dinner at the kitchen table she had recommended I buy. Courtney walked in and froze in the doorway, as if she had just caught us planning something illegal. The simple act of seeing us there, just talking quietly and enjoying each other's company, something that had apparently never happened during my entire relationship with her, triggered an explosive reaction. "Are you serious right now?" she yelled, her keys still in her hand. 3 weeks. It has been 3 weeks since we broke up, and you are already over here with my roommate like this was all planned from the start. I looked up from my pizza, genuinely confused. We were eating dinner and talking about development strategy, hardly a romantic conspiracy. But Courtney was out of control. She turned on Hannah, her voice dripping with venom. "And you? How long have you been planning this betrayal behind my back? How long were you just waiting for me to be out of the picture so you could make your move?" That is when Hannah did something that changed everything. She stood up calmly, looked Courtney right in the eye, and said the truth. "Since the first week I met him." The silence in the kitchen was deafening. "I have been attracted to Ryan since the day you brought him home," she continued softly. "And it has been frustrating watching you treat him like dirt for over a year." Courtney's face went pale. "Oh, so you were just playing the loyal roommate all this time?" "No," Hannah replied with impressive composure. "I'm the person who has been anonymously encouraging his app development for months because I genuinely think it is brilliant, and I wanted him to know that someone believed in him." I stared at her, the pieces of the puzzle suddenly clicking into place. "Anonymously?" Hannah's cheeks flushed slightly, but she held my gaze. "The detailed reviews on your app signed phishing enthusiast, the feature suggestions you were getting, the test reports with bugs, and user experience improvements. That was me." "Okay, pause for a second. Here is an uncomfortable truth that stings a little. We live in a world where the person sitting right next to you can be completely blind to your value, while a stranger on the internet sees you perfectly and supports you in silence. That is not just sad, it is a mirror. How many of us have had a Hannah in our lives? Someone steady, genuine, no drama, but we barely noticed them because we were too busy chasing someone who made us feel like we had to earn their approval every single day. Courtney never saw Ryan's value because she was comparing him to a fantasy. And Ryan almost missed Hannah because he was focused on someone who did not even deserve his energy. The most valuable people in your life usually are not the loudest ones. They are the ones who show up quietly, who do genuine things without expecting anything in return. Pay attention to who is actually there for you versus who is just playing the part. Courtney posted photos with heart emoji captions. Hannah sent bug reports and asked how his day was. Honestly, one is love, and the other is content. Learn the difference before you waste your best years on someone who sees your life as just a backdrop for their own story. Now back to the original poster. My mind was completely reeling. For months, I had had this mysterious, incredibly supportive user who would leave thoughtful feedback on my app, suggest clever improvements I had not thought of, and even help identify bugs and interface issues. This person had been more encouraging of my creative work than my own girlfriend had ever been. I could not stand watching Courtney belittle your intelligence and creativity as if they were flaws, when they are actually exceptional qualities, Hannah continued. Your app is genuinely innovative, and you deserve to know that someone appreciated what you were building. She took out her phone and showed me screenshots of all the feedback she had sent over the months. Detailed technical suggestions, interface improvements, even marketing ideas to grow the user base. It was incredibly thorough and had genuinely influenced the development of my app. I use your app for my own fishing trips, and honestly, it is better than anything else out there, she added. The data integration is smart, the interface is intuitive, and the community features you added last month are perfect. You should be proud of what you have built. Courtney's expression shifted from anger to a kind of panic. She was realizing not only that her roommate had supported me in a way she never had, but also that there was a much deeper intellectual connection between us that she had been completely unaware of. "This is insane," Courtney said, her voice growing shrill. "You are acting like I am the bad guy when I was just being honest about what I wanted in a relationship." That is when Hannah dropped the bomb. Honest? Like when you were pursuing connections with financially successful older men online. She asked, showing something on her phone. Or honest about your private conversations with that guy Dylan, the crypto investor from your gym? Courtney's face went white. "I know about your late-night messages with men who posted pictures of their luxury lifestyles," Hannah continued relentlessly. I know how your entire personality changes when you talk about wealthier men. I know about the dating profiles where you listed minimum income requirements for your partners. I felt a strange mix of relief and disgust. My growing suspicions had not been paranoia or jealousy after all. And my personal favorite, Hannah added, her voice sharp as she scrolled on her phone, is how you referred to Ryan as your training boyfriend to your influencer friends, like he was just a practice run until you found someone better with money. Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. Training boyfriend. All those months of feeling inadequate, and she had just seen me as a temporary option. Dylan told me all about it. Hannah continued. You asked him if you were settling for Ryan. You complained that he did not make enough to support the lifestyle you wanted. You wondered if you should hold out for someone with a Tesla in a downtown penthouse. The irony of the situation was brutal. Courtney had been criticizing my supposed lack of ambition to her potential upgrade, while Hannah was valuing the very qualities Courtney despised. So, no, Hannah concluded firmly. I do not feel guilty at all for being attracted to someone who deserves better than to be treated like a disposable stepping stone while you auditioned wealthier connections on Instagram. Courtney's immediate reaction to this total exposure was a social media attack. Within hours, her Instagram stories were flooded with dramatic posts about fake friends, betrayal, and snake roommates. She constructed a narrative where she was the innocent victim of a conspiracy. Inspirational quotes, posts about toxic people, captions like, when someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time, and sometimes the people closest to you are the ones plotting your downfall. Her goal was clear, to rally our friend group by painting herself as the victim, betrayed by a disloyal roommate and a vindictive ex. But Courtney had severely underestimated something. Everyone had noticed her behavior for a long time. The first crack in her narrative appeared when a mutual friend from the gym commented on one of her dramatic posts. Weren't you asking me 2 weeks ago if Dylan was a good catch while you were still with Ryan? That single comment opened the floodgates. Suddenly, other friends started sharing their own observations. A friend from our hiking group recounted how uncomfortable he felt watching Courtney openly show interest in wealthier men at parties while I was standing right there, how she would touch their arms, laugh way too hard at their mediocre jokes, and make pointed remarks about how some men just have that natural success energy that is so attractive. Megan, who worked with Courtney on one of her social media clients, shared screenshots of conversations where Courtney complained that I was too content with mediocrity and not financially ambitious enough for a woman with real goals and high standards. The most damning revelation came from Rachel, who was at Courtney's birthday party 4 months earlier. Apparently, Courtney had spent the entire evening apologizing for my presence, describing me as nice, but a little basic, and explaining that she was trying to help him develop bigger career and social ambitions. Each new comment, each screenshot, methodically dismantled the victim narrative Courtney had carefully constructed, revealing a consistent pattern of disrespectful behavior that our friends had been quietly observing and commenting on for months. But the final nail in the coffin of her social media campaign came from the most unexpected source, Dylan himself, the crypto investor she saw as her potential upgrade and the reason for our breakup. Courtney, I have to be completely honest here, his public comment read. You have been making me uncomfortable with your advances for months. I knew you had a boyfriend, and every time I tried to maintain appropriate boundaries, you pushed harder. You asked me very intrusive questions about my income and investments, suggested we meet up alone outside the gym, and made it clear your current relationship was not meeting your financial standards. It was totally inappropriate, and honestly, I felt bad for Ryan because he seemed like a really solid guy who did not deserve to be treated like that. The fact that her primary target had not only rejected her advances from the start, but also felt sympathy for me completely annihilated what was left of her reputation. The comment section of her posts turned into a total wasteland. Screenshots, testimonials, and personal experiences exposing her self-serving behavior. Friends started posting proof of her contradictions, screenshots where she criticized my lack of ambition while bragging to others that she was dating someone with a stable job in his own place. Messages where she described our relationship as boring and limiting while posting photos of us with captions about her amazing and supportive partner. Her hypocrisy was on full display for everyone to see. But the most striking revelation came from Amanda, another mutual friend. She shared a voice message Courtney had sent her 2 weeks before our breakup. In the recording, you could clearly hear her say, I like Ryan as a person, but he is not long-term rich enough for me. You know? I need someone who is a really high earner with big financial ambitions. But for now, he is like the perfect boyfriend. So stable and reliable and nice. Kind of like a placeholder while I figure out my real options. The destruction of Courtney's reputation was so swift and so complete that by the end of the week, she had deleted most of her dramatic posts and set her account to private. But it was too late. Everything had already been saved and shared. Our entire social circle now saw clearly who she really was and how she treated not only me, but the very idea of an honest, respectful relationship. Courtney moved out of the apartment she shared with Hannah less than 2 weeks after her online image imploded. She claimed she could not stand living across the street from a constant reminder of her roommate's ultimate betrayal. But in reality, what she could not stand was watching two people build something real, something authentic, based on mutual respect, shared interests, and genuine compatibility. Okay, quick pause here. This is the moment where most people sit back, feeling satisfied. Justice was served. The screenshots came out. Dylan publicly rejected her. The entire friend group turned on her. Her account went private. It is a perfect, clean, almost cinematic dose of karma. And I get it, it feels good. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Courtney is not an anomaly. She is a type of person that exists in huge numbers. And the scariest part is, she probably did not even see herself as the villain. She thought she was being smart. In her mind, she was not being cruel. She was being realistic. We live in a culture that quietly teaches people, especially young women, that their partner's income is a reflection of their own value. That dating someone stable but not flashy is settling. That leveling up is just common sense. Instagram did not create Courtney. It just gave her a platform and an audience that validated every one of her most superficial instincts. And that brutal downfall? That is not just karma. It is what happens when an entire personality is built on external validation with no internal foundation. She did not fall because she was evil. She fell because she was empty. Building your self-worth on the image you project to others is like building a house on sand and calling yourself an architect. It looks solid until the first storm hits. One honest comment, one screenshot, and suddenly the whole thing collapses because nothing was ever real to begin with. Real confidence, real relationships, real success, none of that needs an audience to exist. If what you have is only valuable when other people are watching, then you do not really have anything at all. Now let us see what happens next in the story. While Hannah was helping Courtney pack up her impressive collection of ring lights, phone tripods, and designer clothes she could not really afford, I learned just how much Hannah had been there for me during the toughest months of my relationship. She had been anonymously sharing my fishing app on relevant online forums and groups, encouraging my work by leaving detailed and helpful technical feedback, and had even convinced Mrs. Thompson to offer me a reduced rent by describing me as a genuinely good person. Completely undervalued by someone who did not deserve him. 6 months later, Courtney's carefully constructed influencer lifestyle had completely crumbled, while my life had taken a turn I never could have imagined. My fishing app had exploded beyond my wildest expectations. What had started as a simple personal project had become something truly successful. Over 85,000 active users, partnerships with fishing tackle shops and boat rental companies, and even serious interest from major outdoor recreation corporations to acquire the technology and scale it nationally. The anonymous support, detailed feedback, and testing that Hannah had provided in the early months had been absolutely crucial in making the app so successful. Her experience in quality control had helped me identify and fix problems I never would have noticed on my own. Meanwhile, Courtney's social media career had spectacularly collapsed. The public scandal destroyed her credibility with the local businesses that paid her to promote their products. Her follower count plummeted as people realized her lifestyle was an illusion, funded by maxed-out credit cards and family money she was spending at an unsustainable rate. She had to move back in with her parents after exhausting all her resources. The last I heard, she was working a part-time retail job while trying to rebuild her online presence. But the internet never forgets, and her reputation was permanently shattered. Hannah and I had been officially together for about 4 months at that point, and our relationship was built on a foundation completely different from anything I had ever known. We spent our evenings working on our respective projects, her on quality control certifications, and me on new features for my app. On weekends, we went hiking. We had long conversations about books, technology, and ideas that actually mattered to both of us. She had started helping me with the business development side of the app, and her analytical mind was incredibly valuable in improving user retention and engagement. We were actually building something together, instead of just playing a role for others. That is when Courtney and Dylan knocked on my door. It was a Tuesday evening, around 7 p.m. I opened it to find both of them on my doorstep, looking completely defeated. Courtney had clearly been crying. Her makeup was smeared, and she looked exhausted. Dylan, for his part, seemed extremely uncomfortable, looking around as if he did not want to be there. "Ryan," Courtney began, her voice trembling. We really need to talk to you about something important. Please." I leaned against the doorframe without inviting them in, curious to know what could possibly bring them here together. "What is going on?" Dylan cleared his throat awkwardly. "Look, man, I know this is super uncomfortable for everyone, but we are in a really desperate situation, and we heard through some friends that you might be able to help us." I raised an eyebrow. "Help you? How exactly?" And then the whole pathetic story started to come out. Dylan's crypto investments had gone disastrously wrong. He had lost nearly $180,000 after promoting a project that turned out to be a total scam. He was facing potential bankruptcy and even legal trouble for encouraging others to invest. Courtney, on her end, had drained her savings and maxed out several credit cards trying to maintain her influencer image. She was now in debt, humiliated, and back at her parents' house. And here is where the story gets really interesting. They had heard through mutual friends that my app was a huge success, that major companies were interested, and that I was potentially on the verge of a life-changing financial windfall. And they wanted a piece of it. "I know I made huge mistakes," Courtney said, crying. "I was immature and I treated you badly when you deserved so much better. But I have learned from my mistakes. I have changed, and I think we could be really good partners now. I have experience in marketing and contacts in the influencer world that could help you grow your app." Dylan immediately jumped in. "And I understand investments and finance, even if I have had a few recent setbacks. We could help you manage the acquisition process, set up a partnership in exchange for a stake in your project." I looked from one to the other. The woman who had treated me like a temporary option and the guy who was supposed to be her upgrade, now both desperate, practically begging the training boyfriend they had once looked down on. "So, let me get this straight," I said slowly, letting the full irony of the situation sink in. "Courtney, you called me mediocre and unambitious. You made me feel like I was not up to your standards. You publicly humiliated me while secretly trying to replace me with someone richer. And you, Dylan, you were that replacement. You knew she was in a relationship, but that did not stop you from being her exit plan. And now, you want me to save you from the consequences of your own choices." They exchanged panicked glances, clearly hoping I would be the good guy and help them out of the hole they had dug for themselves. "The thing is," I continued, savoring the moment more than I probably should have, "Hannah warned me about this months ago. People like you always come crawling back when they realize they made a huge mistake. People who treat others like disposable stepping stones only understand the value of loyalty and genuine relationships when they desperately need something." Courtney tried to interrupt. "Ryan, please, I know I hurt you badly, but I have really changed. I have learned from my mistakes. I could bring so much to your business." "Enough," I cut her off. "You had your chance to be a part of something real. Instead, you chose to chase status symbols and treat people poorly while you looked for a better opportunity. Hannah saw the potential in my work when you saw a boring waste of time. She supported my ambitions when you were ashamed of them. If this app is successful and has any value today, it is because of her, not you." I could see the panic growing on their faces. They finally understood I was not going to be their solution. "Here is exactly what is going to happen," I said firmly. "Absolutely nothing. You are going to figure out your own problems, just like I built my success by working hard, treating people with genuine respect, and creating something real instead of looking for shortcuts and using other people." I started to close the door, then paused for a second. "Oh, and Courtney? That training boyfriend you were so ashamed of, the one you wanted to replace as soon as possible? Turns out he was exactly the kind of person worth investing in all along. You just never saw it. I shut the door. Behind it, I could hear Courtney burst into sobs while Dylan was still trying to tell her they could find another way to convince me. Hannah appeared beside me in the hallway. She had heard everything from the kitchen. "So how does it feel?" she asked, wrapping her arms around me with a smile. I smiled back. "Honestly, perfect." 8 months later, I sold my fishing app to a major outdoor recreation company for $1.8 million. Hannah and I used part of the money to buy a beautiful house with a workshop where we can develop our projects and passions. We are planning to get engaged next spring and are already working on a new app together, this time for hiking trails and outdoor activity planning. Sometimes the best revenge is just living well and choosing the right people to build that life with. The last I heard of Courtney, she was working at a mall retail store, still living with her parents, and unsuccessfully trying to rebuild her social media presence. Dylan declared bankruptcy and moved back to his small hometown. Meanwhile, Hannah and I wake up every morning grateful to have each other and excited about what we are building together. It turns out that when you finally stop accepting being treated like an option, you make room for something that is actually worthwhile. So, my YouTube family, here is my take on this story. Let's just take a second to process this, because honestly, wow. Courtney walked into that coffee shop thinking she was making a power move. She genuinely believed she was the prize, that she was doing Ryan a favor by being honest. And hey, you have to give her this. She was honest, just not in the way she thought. Because what she really revealed was that she was treating a real, decent human being like a free trial subscription that she planned to cancel as soon as a premium version came along. That is not a relationship. That is just using someone while you wait for something better. And Dylan, honestly, Dylan is a whole life lesson by himself. The perfect example of what happens when your entire personality is built on borrowed money and borrowed confidence. This guy was supposed to be the upgrade, and he could not even manage his own finances. And despite that, he had the nerve to show up at Ryan's house and ask for a piece of his business. The audacity is almost impressive. But what really stood out to me in this story is Hannah. Because Hannah did not show up like some dramatic hero. She did not make grand speeches. She did not put herself in the spotlight. She just showed up, quietly. The anonymous app reviews, the detailed feedback, the connection with Mrs. Thompson. That was not a strategy. It was just a good person doing good things, and that is rare. Now, the lessons here are pretty simple, but strangely, people keep learning them the hard way. First, how someone treats your ambitions before you are successful tells you everything about them. Courtney thought Ryan's app was embarrassing. Hannah thought it was brilliant. Same app, two different mindsets. Second, status and stability are not the same thing. Courtney was chasing status. Ryan had built real stability. One survives a crash, the other collapses. And third, when someone shows you they see you as temporary, believe them immediately. Ryan did, and that decision changed his entire life. He is up $1.8 million, a house, and a partner who believed in him before there was anything to gain. Some people really do fumble the best thing they will ever have, and then wonder why karma hit them with such pinpoint accuracy. Comment: this story really resonated with me. I keep thinking about how important it is to truly respect ourselves and not settle for anyone who doesn't see our worth. I've learned that setting clear boundaries isn't being difficult. It's actually an act of self-love. What touches me most is seeing how genuine kindness and quiet support can heal us in ways that loud promises never could. I truly believe we all deserve relationships built on mutual respect and real connection. Taking responsibility for our own happiness, instead of waiting for someone else to provide it, changes everything. Choosing peace over chaos has been one of the best decisions I've ever made. When you start valuing yourself, you naturally attract people who value you, too. It's never too late to walk away from what hurts and toward what feels right. I would love to hear what this story made you reflect on in your own life. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.